This is PNC Roundtable.
Hello, this is Ric DeVore, Regional President for PNC Bank, and thank you for listening to PNC Roundtable. It's on this show that we tackle some of the region's tough issues with people who make a difference.
Now here's the PNC Roundtable.
Welcome in to the PNC Roundtable. I'm Paul W. Smith, along with my co-host, Regional President Ric DeVore. Ric, always a pleasure to see you. Happy fall.
Tomorrow is the day. I'm looking forward. It's also the new school year, so this is a very timely topic.
It is a new school year, and what better way to spend our time than going back to school with Roy Roberts? You know, it seems like it's a Mr. Rogers kind of a moment with the music. And it's Mr. Roberts. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Roy, good to see you.
Good to see you. And I've been called worse things.
Yeah, well, listen, I'm a big fan of the late, great Fred Rogers, that's for sure. You know, he had a major impact on generations of kids, and that's what you're doing right now, having a major impact on generations of kids and families. And I want to salute you for the incredibly good job you're doing under the toughest of conditions. It's been said you've got the toughest job in the city. And we stand alongside you. I certainly know that Ric DeVore does and PNC with all the things they do with their PNC Grow Up Great program and everything else.
Well, it's the toughest job I ever had, Rick, and Rick know that. But it's the most rewarding job because we get the opportunity to change lives, and we couldn't get it done without our partners. PNC, what they're doing with us is absolutely incredible, and we appreciate it.
Well, it's I'll tell you what, it's in the leadership of Ric DeVore. It's in their DNA, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we spend time with Roy Roberts, Detroit Public Schools emergency manager. But let's talk about this new school year. It's underway. It looked as if, from all the figures that I had heard, that the Detroit Public Schools' efforts to inform parents about the importance of school preparedness was very successful.
It was ultra successful at this point, and probably the best it's been in 12 to 14 years. We had 90% plus of our students back. In prior years, it would take 3 or 4 weeks to make that happen. That's important because we know if these kids are farther behind, if we get them in school, we can teach them. If they're not in school, we cannot teach them. So it's critically important. We're off to a great start. We had a lot of work with the communities, with our partners, with the faith community, who really worked hard to make sure parents understood the criticality and the importance of getting kids in school, and we're off to a good start.
Without any of the politics involved, and back to an old phrase that has turned some people off and turned some people on, but it does take a village. It takes a village in terms of our kids, the entire community, parents first, the entire community, and of course the school system, everybody in the school system, all work together to make this be successful.
That's really true. I mean, our partnership, for example, is a partnership with not only Detroit Public Schools and the Foundation, but Music Hall, Detroit Parent Network, and then our volunteers. And, you know, in terms of volunteerism, Paul, I was mentioning to you before, our volunteerism with our employees is 75% participate in our Grow Up Great program, which is the highest participation rate in the entire PNC system, and I think it has to do with the cause. I mean, it's about kids, and I think it really resonates with people.
The need is so very real and so very obvious. But let me ask you, Roy Roberts, what's been the impact of the PNC Grow Up Great program on the children, the parents, the teachers in the system? Is the program making a difference?
It's making a real difference, and it's making a difference in every one of those categories that you mentioned. First of all, the students. They're helping them in science in so many areas that it's unreal. The parents are getting more involved because they believe in what's going on here, and they're a part of it. And then the teachers made them a part of it. And we're doing a better job of training the teachers because of the PNC requirements that we do that. So we're all better off because of PNC in this regard.
I mean, the PNC requirements, Ric, what is?
Yeah, and I'm glad that Roy mentioned that, because Roy and I have spent a lot of time talking about this. But in addition to, you know, being with pre-K kids, one of the requirements in our foundation is teacher development. And we've had a lot of success with that, and just in terms of, you know, the teachers there's learnings for them as well. That's a requirement whether we're over at the music hall or whether we're doing a science curriculum. And that's really, I think, very helpful to the DPS system, and I think the parents like that as well. So it's a really key element, and it gets into something that Roy and I have had lots of conversations about, and that is measurement. And so, you know, you have to measure if you're being impactful.
Yep.
And part of that is in teacher development.
What he's really trying to tell you is that we've had lots of talk about this, because he says, you're going to get it done, and you're going to get it done right, because it's good for the kids, it's good for the teachers, it's good for the community, or we're not going to participate. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And we're responding.
And we have the right guy on the job. He's so bashful that it,
So is he.
That's all well and good, and I appreciate the senses of humor, but I'm bringing you back to the sobering reality that God bless you, Roy, for understanding, having been a businessman all your life, how important it is if somebody's going to help by bringing money into the project, that there's nothing wrong with them wanting to make sure that there are results. And you know what made me think of that right away was Bob Thompson, when he tried to give $200 million to the public schools, and Governor Granholm supported the rejection of that money. I'm sorry, I'm knocking over my coffee mug. I'm so upset with this. Rejected that money because the Thompsons wanted to know for sure that there'd be some kind of checks and balances to show that the money was being used the way it was supposed to be.
It's called accountability.
Right.
I'm trying to find him today. We take that money and put it to good use, because the kids in our neighborhood, the young people in that neighborhood, the key to turning this community around is educating our young people. We've got to educate our young people.
Paul, it's fascinating you brought that up, because when I first came back to this region a couple of years ago, I was sitting in the parking lot of the Science Center, and I noticed, the new charter school there is named after Mr. Thompson. And I asked my chief of staff, Sean Wilson, who's that? And he said, well, you better brace yourself for a story here. And I thought to myself, boy, what are we getting into? And as you probably recall, this is the first time PNC, and now we've done it in Chicago, has partnered with an urban school system. But it takes people like Roy that, are really taking one for the team, if you will, and will not tolerate no accountability.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right.
Well, you reacted coming into town the same way those of us who were here paying attention reacted. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? Turn down $200 million that somebody wants to help these kids with education? That aside, the reason I think we're witnessing greater involvement of a corporate and business community in supporting the schools is that very Roy Roberts thinking. And am I wrong, or is there certainly an uptick? It certainly seems to be.
I think you're right. I think it's a matter of I understand where the business world's coming from, and they're not going to make an investment without accountability. They can't spend their money that way. And if we don't have accountability, we cheat the kids. That's not a fair thing to do. So my mind is a business mind that's got a heart that knows it's the right thing to do for kids, and that's what we're trying to work every step of the way.
And, the parallel that I would give you and that I'm excited about is the way Roy, in my opinion, conducts himself is very similar to our governor. They tell you what they're going to do, they measure it, and they just say, this is who we are, this is what we want to accomplish, and they go about getting it done. The similarities are actually kind of striking when you think about it. And it's that kind of businessman, workman-like approach, and it's, why are you surprised? I'm doing what I told you I was going to do. And
I think it's critically important, because in my lifetime, people who sit around the table and pontificate, they're just giving their ideas. But when you follow the data and you understand what the data is telling you, you got to fix it. You got to work on it. So you've been clear about that with me. You've been kind of bashful, but
I thought, what happened? What have you done with Ric DeVore?
No,
he made me understand.
I think we
wasn't hard either.
I gave Roy Roberts a little Roy Roberts, maybe.
Yeah, a little Roy Roberts back at you. Yeah. Well, Roy Roberts is our special guest on our PNC Roundtable, along with Regional President Ric DeVore. Paul W. here, and we're talking about being back at school, back to school, with Roy Roberts. And he mentioned earlier about community partners, and Roy, I want you to continue that thought. It does take all of us. It takes the parents, it takes the teachers and everybody in the school. It takes the students. They got to be held accountable and learn responsibility for their own benefits. And you mentioned churches, too.
Yeah, we really went and talked to the faith-based community this year. In this urban area, they control a lot of things that go on in our community. They tell people what to do. They tell them when it's right. They tell them when it's wrong. We says, why aren't we talking to them? So we've approached them. We had 71 ministers and their wives at my home for a reception, And they followed through with a commitment to help us, not just the first day of school, but throughout the school year. And they had me and staff from Detroit Public Schools come into their churches to encourage students to come back to school and get in school. So we've had a lot of help. But you're onto something. It takes an entire village. See, I don't believe teachers teach because of me. They teach because they're committed. They're committed to this community, and they're committed to the well-being of the kids. And I'm a facilitator. And if I do that right, they can be successful.
And nice of you to recognize that teachers might be able to do any number of other jobs and make more money. So they have to really be committed to helping and to growing these kids and realizing the investment in all of our futures. And so nice of you to remember that and to salute those teachers, because we only hear about the bad teachers. We don't hear enough about the good teachers.
You're right. We don't hear enough about the good teachers. We don't hear enough about the good things we do in the Detroit public school system. I can tell you about PNC and what they do. If you could see it, if you could touch it, if you could feel it, you'd understand what they're doing in this community. And we have other partners that are like them somewhat, but Ric DeVore is going to make sure you're going to toe the line, you're going to get it done right, you're going to be accountable. That's the way we have to run the system, and our kids will be the beneficiaries of it.
Well, they like that PNC Grow Up Great program. It's in the DNA of PNC, and we've learned that, and it's in Ric's DNA as well. Let's talk a little bit about the financial side. And what progress is being made in terms of the district's finances and operations, and the status of the legacy deficit, Roy.
Well, that's been a big issue and an albatross around the necks of Detroit Public Schools for as long as anybody here might remember, the last 20 years maybe. When I came on board, the deficit was $347 million. Today is $72 million in 1 year and 2 months. We sold $100 million worth of long-term bonds to get rid of short-term notes. We tightened up our budgets, and every year we beat our operating budget the last 2 years. It's really kind of simple. There's a lot of waste in the system. We're getting the waste out of the system, and if we take in $1, we're going to spend $1, not $1.50, $1.75. So we're going at that, and that's been somewhat the easier part of it. So we're going to keep working at it to get rid of the deficit.
There's an operating millage coming up in November. Obviously, operating millages are very important.
It's very important. It's key to our existence. It is not a new budget. It's not a new tax. It's an old tax with a 10-year life. It represents about 21% of our overall operating budget, what we use every day to run the business, about $80 million. If we don't get that, we would probably have to lay off 900 teachers and associated staff. So it's really key to our existence. We've been successful in the past with our community in very difficult times because it's not a homeowner's tax. It's a tax on businesses, commercial operations. So it's the homeowner voting for businesses and commercial people to pay their portion of the tax. So hopefully people will understand that and we'll get that job done.
And you have to earn that credibility, and I think that financial discipline that Roy's brought to the process, they deserve to have that passed. It's not like what I'm going to do, it's what we've done, and I think that's all about this credibility issue that I think really is really key to the success of DPS and really what Roy's brought to the table, and I think Robert Bob's started as well.
Yeah, and it's helpful to know that the money is going to this extremely important and good cause, but that it is being managed by a businessman, that somebody is keeping an eye on it, and it isn't going into an endless tunnel as it has in the past and not really getting anything done.
This is not a black hole. We're going to be accountable. We're going to spend it right. Every dollar we take in will be aimed at a principal, a teacher, or a student. And we're going to make sure if we make an investment that we get a proper return academically from the students in that regard.
You know, Ric, I had said at the beginning that our guest, Roy Roberts, Detroit Public School Emergency Manager, had the toughest job in the city. I'm going to go a little further and say one of the most important jobs in the city, too, given that the Detroit Public Schools can play a role in the continued revival and rebirth of our city. If you don't have good schools, you can't have a great city.
No, I would agree, and I think what homeowners want to know is, I call the 2 S's, safety and schools. And if you don't have either, you have to have both. And Roy, I've said this many times, and maybe I'm embarrassing him, is really taking one for the team here. I mean, he doesn't have to do this. I'm sure he'd be happy being down in Scottsdale more often than he's up here.
No, I already made a note. General Motors and the hard work he did then was very, very good to Roy. If he could have 71 ministers and their wives all at his house, I'm thinking that's a big house.
It's
God
bigger
bless
than
you.
we need.
God bless you for that.
It's a perfect kind that you can't sell.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of those going around. Boy, do I know that. But the reality is, you're right. It's also very important, and because you can't hire people to come here to Detroit to work for PNC if they don't feel safe and they don't think that they can put their kids in good schools.
No, absolutely, and and it's very exciting what's going on around Midtown and so forth. But the issue is, we would like to keep people once household formation starts, family formation. So all these great things that are happening in the region, wouldn't it be great when people decide to adopt or start a family that they stay? And I think that can't happen without strong schools. And that's not to say there's not other things going on, private schools or charter, but the fact of the matter is Roy has charter schools and public schools as well, in his system. But we have to find a viable way to keep people here once family formation starts. That's what they want to hear.
Absolutely right. Roy, you've said before, privately and publicly, that you've got a great leadership team. And your leadership team is made up entirely of professionals with deep Detroit roots. And I think that's extremely important.
Well, it is. And first of all, they're intelligent people. They're bright people. They're learned people. But they're committed. They're committed to the same charge that I'm committed to, and that's educating the young people in the city of Detroit. And believe me, if they were not committed and showing it every day, I would ask them to become the alumni by request. I wouldn't keep them in the system. That's cheating kids. We can't do that. So I've got a great group that's working together. We're all in one building now instead of 3 different blocks, so people can put the problem on the table, solve the problem, and move on down the road.
Excellent.
So we're excited about this coming year, and as you know, we've had on this program Bud Denker from Penske.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we also do with Roy and his team is what I call clustering, which is really every major cause that we support, we bring in DPS kids. So whether it's the Thanksgiving Day Parade, which that one is kind of straightforward and doesn't surprise you, but I think it does surprise people that we have children at the North American Auto Show, and that we have told the Penske organization that we will again this year support the kids on Belle Isle the day before the Grand Prix starts, and also support Fifth Gear, which is something that's really exciting, and I think Roy and I have some fun with as well, and that's for the 5th graders in engineering. So pretty much everything we do that's major, we have to find a way to get DPS and the kids involved with.
Paul, think about that. I work the auto industry. There is no way these kids could get that kind of touch on technology and understand what it means without this help. Our school system, we can't afford to get it done sometimes. Mm-hmm. So this is really important work. And of all the things we do, that was absolutely fantastic to look in the face of those young people, touch the vehicle, learn about vehicles, learn about technology, learn about the possibilities in their life. And that's what we're trying to create for these kids, to know that they can be more than what they see around them every day.
Fabulous and so inspirational, and I'm not surprised. The status of your administration's relationship with the teachers, other staff, as well as the labor unions right now, Roy?
I feel good about that. I've got 5 major objectives that I've put in front of the entire district. And one of the objectives is working to improve every touch point in the district. If that's interfacing with a parent, a student, the union official, a school board official, or your customer, we got to improve that on every reach. People have got to feel that we care about the kids, and we're going to set up an environment that's conducive for everybody to be successful. So I feel good about where we are. We'll continue to work it. We decided took everybody a pay cut of 10%, decided to give 2% of it back to everybody because we're doing better than we thought we were doing. We'll put the budget together. We think those are the right things to do. And going forward, we have said to the union, for every $5 million we save in cost, we'll give the employees 1% of it back. So that pull us together, that have us working together to make a difference. And I think those things are really good. And we're getting calls from all over the state, from other districts, about how did you do it, and want to know more about it.
Like any employee, they're looking for honesty and fairness.
No question about it. And, start the school year, I go out a few days early, and I want to inspect schools. I want to talk to teachers and principals. I walk in this one school, and here is a lovely teacher here, and she's got her 8-year-old daughter with her, and she's about 9.5 months pregnant. But she's working on her own time to get that classroom ready.
Wait a minute, Roy, wait a second. Yeah. 9.5 months.
Well, she said it was only 8.5. I talked to her. But that teacher is committed to what she's doing.
Yeah.
And her profession. And those are the people that make a difference. You never want to abuse those people. You want to do the right thing.
No. Absolutely right. It's true in all of business.
It really is. And this is, I've said this many times, it's one thing to write a check. It's a different thing to write a check and go in and experience it. And I think that's when the commitment comes. If you read my bio, I taught at Wayne State University. That's great. But on a personal basis, my son's a teacher. And, if you see these teachers, my two teachers, Ms. Cooney and Ms. Beach, it's incredible what they do and how they do it. And they're very thankful for any kind of help they get. And I'm looking forward to reading again this year with them. So
wait a minute. When you say my two teachers,
Paul, I believe that if you ask people to do something, it's a pretty good idea if you do it as well. So my entire executive team, including me, read in the schools every month.
Every month?
I happen to read at Shoals off the lodge and between 6 and 7. And I'll be back there again and during the school year. Because how do you ask your employees to participate if you aren't doing it? The classic, don't do as I do as I say.
I've only read in Sophie's class once a year, and they never ask me back more than once a year. Maybe I'm doing it wrong.
But you see why it's such a joy.
Sophie might be smarter than you think. I don't know.
Oh, man.
But you see why I'm so excited about being here with Ric and his team, because they're not playing with the system. They're really working with the system to make a difference, and that's a joy.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. It's probably the neatest thing I do all year.
I bet it is a lot. Rewarding.
It really is, and it's interesting because I've asked before, should I take my coat and tie off? And the teachers are always, no, come in that way. Right. We want people
the way you are, and the way what you've accomplished in your life. Don't get embarrassed by this, Ric, but what you've accomplished is a lot, and we want those young kids to see. When you accomplish, you do wear a suit and tie, and you in different lines of work. Some lines of work you wear different clothing, but the point is, this is what you're supposed to look like. They should learn that.
Yeah. So it's very rewarding. So I'm excited about the school year again, and I trade notes with my son Eric about teaching tips. He's down in Scottsdale. Hanging out. He's watching his house. I didn't tell you that, but he's actually hanging out.
That's a great thing.
He probably wishes he lived in your condo on the golf course. But
wait a minute. It's a condo and you can have that many people?
No, I'm talking about his home in Scottsdale.
Oh, okay. I'm totally confused. All right. Come the end of the school year, Roy, tell me how you'd like to define success in terms of where the district and the schools will be at that point.
The key to education is educating kids. And we've got to move academically. We got to move forward. We're off to a great year, as I said before, about start of the school year, getting kids in school, the attendance. We're convinced we're going to work hard to keep that up. But we got to move the academics. And the reason it has not moved in this district is because you've had 7 superintendents in 8 years. There's been no stability. This business, Ric's business, no other business could prosper with that kind of breakup. So we're going to make sure there's a degree of stability. We've changed our academic approach. We got 9 schools that are self-directed at the local level, putting boards of directors around them. We think we'll get a better answer that way. We have 91 schools that are more of the traditional way, but we've tightened up the curriculum and the accountability. And for the first time in our lives, the state legislature have said you have to appraise every teacher, and they fall into 4 categories, 1, 2, 3, 4. When you recall them, you can only recall to work the top 2 categories. So we've put the best qualified teacher in front of students this year, and we're proud of that. So we want to see the numbers move. More than just the test, the state test. We want to see kids who can appreciate education at a better and higher level. So I'm excited about the possibilities.
That is exciting.
No, it really is.
It is. Imagine if in your business you had to, Rick, just promote people just because they were there 10 years or 15 years. If you weren't allowed to promote the people who were best suited for the job that's available, you wouldn't do so well.
No, I think we'd be destined to mediocrity. There's no doubt about that.
And we don't want that in any area. We can't afford that in any area of business, and we certainly have learned we can't afford that in education.
We can't. That's the biggest risk one could take. You don't dare take that risk with young people. A child is born tabula rasa. They're blank. We as adults get a chance to shape that. Kids don't fail. We fail the kids. We don't dare let these kids down. And as a community, you've talked about several times, we have to come to the conclusion they're the most important, the most vulnerable things in our community. We got to protect it. We got to grow it. We got to shape it. So it's a proper tax-paying citizen, a person who can make a difference in our community, and that's what we're all working for, and that's why I enjoy working with PNC.
Roy Roberts, it's been hard to imagine, over a year, 15 months now? Has it been 15 months?
3 years, 4 months. It's been 15 months, and it's the toughest job I've ever had in my life, and I've had tough jobs, but it's the most rewarding.
Got to be the most satisfying.
It's the most rewarding.
And
you have a bad day, go out and look in the face of a third grader, and you know why you're doing what you're doing.
Oh, man, really, that can make me emotional. What would you say are the three things you're most proud of accomplishing? I know that this is a moving target, and you continue to accomplish more and more, and God bless you for that. But so far, the three most important, most proud accomplishments?
Well, one, I would say, is the financial improvement we made to the deficit, because we were spending millions back to Wall Street paying off the interest. So by moving that from $347 million to $72 million, we've significantly reduced that. That's one. Number two, I had employees in 3 different blocks in the city of Detroit for headquarters. I moved them all into one building so they can solve problems, and they are solving problems, and we've upgraded their facilities. I'm proud of that. I'm really proud of the fact that we've put a strong staff in place, people who are committed to making a difference in Detroit public schools. I think that's the undergirding. So we're putting process and procedure in place that make us a better organization going forward. So I'm really proud of what we've done there. Now we've got to accelerate the academic improvement in all of our students.
Lots to be proud of. And I'll say, Ric DeVore, that from being close and being involved with the PNC Grow Up Great program and really going into the schools and reading and having involvement, you've probably got a few things that you're very proud of Roy Roberts about, too.
You're right. It's true. And when we started this session, you were talking about Mr. Rogers. And we're kidding about that.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Well,
in the neighborhood.
What you don't realize, and maybe we didn't make as much to do about this, the legacy for PNC in this space has to do with Mr. Rogers. Because remember, he was on public TV in Pittsburgh, our headquarters, and somebody from the Rogers Foundation is on our National Advisory Board for Grow Up Great. So when we ask our employees in 2004, what could be the cornerstone of our philanthropy, I'm highly confident part of that is due to Mr. Rogers, and it was kids. But so little did you know. That's how good you are.
Well, and yet there's more. And now you'll hear the rest of the story. Many, many years ago, I was doing a television show, hosting it, a kid in his 20s. I'd never heard of Fred Rogers. I didn't have kids that were watching television. I didn't have kids. And I was given an assignment to fly to Pittsburgh and to interview a guy named Fred Rogers. I knew nothing. And I thought, okay, I'm going where I'm going. Somebody sponsored it, and we went. I go into the building where he does this at the Pittsburgh Public Broadcasting, and I sit there in the lobby waiting. I say, hi, Paul W. Smith. I'm here to see Fred Rogers. Okay, fine. A guy walks out in a sweater and says, you must be Paul W. Hi, Mr. Paul W. Would you like to come into my neighborhood? And I go, what the? Who the heck? Wait, I thought he was putting me on.
Yeah.
That was Fred Rogers. Come on, Mr. Paul W. Come on back and Speedy Delivery, Mr. Speedy Delivery. I can't remember all the names. He'll be coming by, and we're in the neighborhood, and he's talking to these characters, and he stayed in character the entire time. And I thought, what did they send me to do? But I'll tell you what, by the end of that day, spending it with Fred Rogers, I thought to myself, I will never meet another man full of this much love for children and for what he was doing. He truly was a minister with what he was doing and doing for the kids, and it was quite an experience. I had no idea that you had a connection with Fred Rogers with that as well.
Absolutely, and he would have been fine in this room with his sweater on, right?
Oh,
Next time I come, I'm going to have my sweater on with a big R on it.
It's cool in this studio, and it's I guess now famously so. Well, I want to say how much I've enjoyed spending, as I always enjoy spending time with you, Ric, and co-hosting this PNC Roundtable, and especially when you, as always, bring in extra special, interesting guests, and one that I have a tremendous amount of respect for because of the job that he took on. As you pointed out, Ric, he didn't need to, and because of the job he's doing as our Detroit Public Schools emergency manager. God bless you, Roy Robertson. And just as Ric will say, and I'll let him have the final word, but we're here for you in any way that we can help.
Thank you much, Paul.
It's all about partners, and in this one I have a world-class partner, and making it come alive, it's a lot of work, but I would agree with Roy. It's the most rewarding thing you could possibly do.
Nothing else could be nearly as important than helping our kids, and that then therefore helps all of us and our futures. That's another edition of the PNC Roundtable with our regional president, Ric DeVore. I'm Paul W. Smith, and thanks again to our very special guest, Roy Roberts, the Detroit Public Schools emergency manager. As we continue, you'll find us right here at WJR.com, and I'll be talking to you in the mornings, Monday through Friday from 5:30 till 9 on WJR. Regards, Paul W. Smith.